Speaker today is Thomas Strang from Justsen Pacific. Thomas, I'll get you to share your slide as I give you a quick intro. Thomas, Thomas is the co-founder and general manager for Justsen Pacific, and that's a part of the global Justsen group out of Denmark. Justsen has some 60 years experience and over 3,000 biomass boilers in operation all around the world in different conditions. Justsen has done one of that flagship biomass projects there with Arena at MSN Milling. But today, Thomas, have you got there? I'm not sure if you're going okay with sharing your screen there. Hopefully you can now launch into your presentation on biomass. That's come through, Thomas. Get you to come off mute and away we go.
Great, thanks. Yes, even the Danes find Justsen kind of tricky to pronounce, so you're in good company. So basically, I am going to run through a presentation quite quickly, because what we are finding in Australia is that we are increasingly becoming part of the conversation when it comes to companies looking to reduce operating expenses, to decarbonize, to give themselves some option on their thermal energy. And what we have found is that it's quite common for the same questions to come up. And so what I wanted to do for everyone today is basically just run through a quick list of criteria, if you like, or conditions that would make your particular site or business a good example, a good use case for using biomass. So the first question that we come across is really the energy cost. And biomass boilers in Australia certainly compete to displace mostly natural gas systems. We are displacing coal and other things, but what we base our conversations on all the time is a financial case. And so the first question is, do you basically believe that the cost of natural gas is going to go back to a wholesale cost of $3 an hour? If you do, then that's great, and you should definitely keep sort of wanting for that to happen. If you don't, you're probably more in touch with perhaps what's happening with natural gas prices in Australia and even around the world. There's any amount of data on gas prices in Australia. These are just sort of a few highlights. As you can see, I mean, since basically 2013, 2014, which is when the export, well, it wasn't even then, it was really 2014, 2015 when the export terminals in Gladstone started exporting. You can see what's happened to the cost of wholesale gas in Australia. I actually remember speaking to companies in sort of 2015 and saying to them, we anticipate your cost of gas is going to go up by about 20%, and we weren't taken seriously. And of course, it's gone up closer to 200% over that time. So this is basically that same graph. But the red dot that you see on the right hand side, that's the Asia spot price for natural gas. So it's sitting at about $25 Australian a gigajoule at the moment. So certainly, if I was building a new gas plant in Australia, that's where you're going to want to target your gas. You're going to want to get into the export market, and of course, that's going to then drag the Australian domestic market up after it. A lot of folks are talking about the potential for existing gas resources in Australia to alleviate some of the not only price problems but even supply problems, and that's probably not really going to make much of a difference. What this graph here is showing in the green columns gas resources that are already under production, and then the sort of pink ones are the ones that are being developed, and the red ones are the contingent supplies. You hear a lot about Narrabri being, one of these sort of savior resources, but you can see that I mean the cost of Narrabri at the wellhead is $7 or $8 a gigajoule. And I mean, that's before everything else that has to happen to it. So the future for Australian gas prices is the risk is definitely on the upside. So again, if you do feel like this is just a passing phase and natural gas is probably going to go back to what it was 7 or 8 years ago, then definitely biomass is not for you. If you do think that perhaps there is price risk around natural gas, then let's keep talking. The nature of biomass boilers is really that they're happiest when you start them up and let them run. They're not really that suitable for batch processing or for limited hours a week. So for example, you know, we're speaking to a company at the moment who use a huge amount of gas for only about 3 months a year. And so even though they're using a stupendous amount of gas and they're paying a lot for it, it just really isn't where the financial value of a biomass boiler lies. So if you are, for example, only working one shift in your manufacturing or your processing, one shift 5 days a week, then it's really not, at the end of the day, going to be worth your while looking into biomass. But if you are running 2 shifts 5 days a week, then it starts to become interesting. Certainly, by far and away, the most compelling financial cases are those operations that are running, say, 18+ hours, 5 or 6 days a week. That's where it starts getting really compelling. And then, of course, what we find is ideal, what is optimal, are facilities that just have a constant need for thermal energy. So if you are just running those batch processes, or if you're sort of reasonably limited in your hours, then as painful as gas prices may be, that's probably going to be where you're going to want to stay. But if you do have those high uptime and those constant energy demands, then you're past gate 2. This presentation is particularly aimed at what are the slam dunk cases for biomass. And so I'll give you some context around this slide. If your demand for energy is basically less than 180 degrees hot water, or you need low pressure steam, and you do have those high uptimes, and you are paying a lot for your natural gas, then you very much are in that slam dunk case, because our boiler systems, the Justsen boiler systems, are basically divided neatly into sort of low pressure and high pressure. The low pressure systems we supply basically off the shelf. So they're built in a factory in Denmark, and then they're broken down into 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, and then they're moved out and they're basically assembled on site. If you have high pressure steam, or you need hot water over 180, it's 100% doable with biomass. And we're doing 3 projects, which are high pressure steam at the moment. But certainly, if you do need low pressure, for example, if you are in the meat sector, typically, some parts of the dairy sector, oilseeds processors, you know, large facilities like hospitals who need large amounts of hot water, those kinds of low pressure, and by low pressure, I mean under 20 bar, that's where you really are in that really compelling case. If you do need high pressure systems, then please talk to us, because, you know, as I was saying, we are doing a number of these projects already. We just need to talk through it a little bit with you. Are you consuming less than 100,000 gigajoules of gas a year, or equivalent energy? I mean, this really comes back to the question about runtime. Because biomass energy is so much more economical than natural gas. I mean, we can supply energy out of a boiler at basically less than $5 a gigajoule almost anywhere in Australia. What you have as your ROI is basically the delta, the difference between the cost of biomass and what you're paying for your gas. And then you multiply that by how many thousands of gigajoules you're actually displacing. So what we found is that around this 100,000 gigajoule a year mark, this is where again, you're really getting into that really strong, really compelling financial case for moving off using natural gas and onto biomass. Basically, it's just a function of how much energy we can displace. And as you can see on this graph, and this presentation will be emailed out to anyone who wants it, the more gas that you're offsetting, really, I mean, what you're paying for the gas almost becomes a secondary concern. If we can offset higher levels of energy, higher quantities of energy, the business case only improves. And again, this is a corollary of that last graph. The payback period falls in tandem with it. So if you are consuming under 100,000 gigajoules a year, it may be worthwhile, and I'll get to these caveats sort of towards the end. But if you are consuming over 100,000 gigajoules, then again, you're very much in that range where this is going to be a financially compelling offer for you. Do you have the space and access? Gas boilers are great. You know, they're small, they're well proven. Gas is a great fuel. The only problem is that it's getting extremely expensive. And if I was to diagnose one major difference between gas and biomass, it's that just the nature of the biomass boiler is that you're going to need a larger footprint. And the vast majority of that footprint will be in the fuel storage. It's just a fact of life with biomass that whenever we speak with, start speaking with new clients, we do need to get an idea of the site conditions. So if, for example, you, for some reason, have a manufacturing facility in, the CBD of Sydney, you're probably not going to have the space. Typically, we deal with companies that are either on the outskirts of metro areas or are regionally based. So as a rule, this isn't normally really an issue for us. And I can't really recall a time when we had to stop speaking to a client about a project because of space. But it's just something that you need to bear in mind. Just to give you an idea of sort of what these systems look like, this is a 15 megawatt superheated hot water. This is 174 degree hot water that we have running on green sawdust in a sawmill in New South Wales. And so this is it's a 15 megawatt site, and these guys also wanted quite a bit of fuel on site in storage, and that's that shed just on the right hand side of the picture there. The footprint for this whole system is around 30 meters by 30 meters, and that's with some room to spare. This is a significantly smaller system. This is 5.5 megawatts, and this is steam. You can see, that there is a lot of variation. The footprint for the boiler and fuel handling on this is significantly smaller. It's about 15 meters wide, about 20 meters long all up. And it's hard to get a good photograph of a biomass boiler because they tend to be quite large and they tend to be indoors. But this is a 3.5 megawatt system that's running on oat hulls in Victoria. So if you are built out to your boundary and everything you have on your site is indispensable, then natural gas is probably where you're going to have to end up staying. But if you do have space, and we are flexible with the configuration and with the layout, then that's something that will basically allow you to continue to look into this. So basically, to summarize, your gas price right now is at a new normal, and it's only going to go higher. If you do run more than 2 shifts 5 days a week, then you're in a really good place to start talking to us about biomass boilers. If your thermal energy requirements are moderate, under 20 bar, for example, then it's going to be a very simple install. And if you consume more than 100,000 gigajoules a year of gas and you have the space, then that's something that will definitely allow you to really look at this and actually have the promise of this turning out really well for you. So the extenuating circumstances that apply to these are you using LPG? So LPG is, just by its nature, you know, always going to be an expensive fuel. So if you are using, normally it starts at around 800,000 litres a year of LPG. Where it starts to get really interesting is at around 1 million litres a year of LPG. Basically, LPG at any price is going to be at a disadvantage to biomass boiler heat. If you are already paying more than around $14 a gigajoule for your natural gas, and believe me, there are plenty of places in Australia that are, then it doesn't, then that's definitely a really good place for you to start talking to us about. One question that comes up a lot is, do we need to be making our own fuel in order for us to do biomass boilers? The answer is absolutely not. We only have 2 clients in Australia who actually make their own fuel and use it. Most of the time we buy it in. But obviously, if you are actually making your own fuel, for example, I mean, you know, sawmills are a classic example. But agricultural processes are as well. If you are making your own fuel, then that's definitely going to put you already at a financial advantage by living the biomass. And are you planning a new build or a greenfield project? Really, what we've been talking about this whole project are retrofits, where we have to make you or our clients feel good about moving away from a whole bunch of investment you've already made into your natural gas plant. If you're doing a new build, the financial case for a biomass boiler is really rock solid, and we would encourage you very much to at least consider it and involve biomass boiler in your project development conversation. And that's the end.
Thomas, many thanks. That was great run through. And once again, there'll be lots of questions come to mind. I'll put a comment in there first. You said if gas is expensive, then, you know, this is great. But this is also about carbon emission reduction as well, and that's certainly playing a big part of the puzzle and the role for changing here.
Absolutely, and we're finding that especially with multinationals and folks who have, you know, signed themselves up to various protocols and who are under tremendous pressure by their investors to decarbonize, and you know, biomass energy solves that problem definitely.
And when it comes to the fuel itself, I've heard it's somewhere between it's viable somewhere between 25 and 50 kilometres to transport the fuel to a biomass boiler, you know, depending on the size and things like that. But where do you find the fuel? How do you know what's available near you? Can you give us some insight on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an excellent question. And I would say literally 100% of the time, the first question we get is around fuel. It's what can we use, where do we get it from, and how can we rely on it? So we at Justsen Pacific will almost always bring the fuel with us on our projects. We have a network of suppliers literally everywhere that there's industry in Australia. And these are plantation management companies, these are agricultural processors, they're forestry processors. Basically, in Australia, it is far more common for us to have biomass fuel without industry than to have industry without biomass fuel within an economical distance. What we look at in terms of haulage is time. Basically, we find that it's economical to move biomass around, or certainly our biomass, if the supply is within 1 to 2 hours of the site. And Australia has huge resources all over the place. And yeah, and we'd encourage you and obviously anyone listening to come and talk to us about what the options are.
Excellent.